Welcome to another edition of Your Impact Attack. That's right, it's Your Impact Attack. And we are taking care of the Impact Attack for you. We're taking on all the impact. We're absorbing it just like a chain wrapped spear is how we're doing it here. So who are we? Well, I am Jamie the Vet Williams. With me, as always, my tag team partner who I'm reaching through the internet and the screen to tag. There's the hot tag. It's pretty hot. Brandon, how's everything going today, tonight, whenever?
It is YouTube strike season, as you can tell, because we are unfortunately not on the Hami Media Group YouTube page, but instead on the ridiculously random because, you know, way it be sometimes, but you got to do what you got to do.
That's right. Um, well, importantly, we are a part of channelattitude.com. So if you're hearing this after the fact, that's probably how you're doing it. But as you know, you can always join us live on these. Well, not always, I guess, is the point that we're trying to say. You can't always join us live. But this is definitely one of those things where we like to have the interactivity. It wouldn't be the VBC without the C, and you guys are the C. So if anybody is out there in the house, as we see some names filing in, Brandon, would you like to announce who's with us so far?
It looks like we got Jay Hall and Lisbeth with us tonight. Thank you guys so much. Apologize for the issues, but it is what it is. You got to do what you got to do.
Got to do what you got to do. So what we got to do is we got to talk about a couple of things. We
Some
got to
breaking
talk
news tonight.
some breaking news, and we're gonna eventually get into not only the episode of Impact but also Sacrifice. So you guys got a
sacrifice.
You got a 66 and 2/3 chance of loving this show that we're about to do for you too. So I guess let's start. If we've got some hot news, if we got some hot breaking news, Brandon, let's go ahead and break
Yep.
it.
Let's break it. So, in the Janelle Grant lawsuit, the 4 executives have been named. The 2 big ones being Nick Khan and Stephanie McMahon.
Oh, yes. Very, very big. So it's interesting because a lot of people that just throw stuff out there just to try to get, take a guess and sound smart or whatever. A lot of people were saying that this is some sort of a, that they implied that Nick Khan was like part of part of a larger power play to remove Vince from power. But however, this is not necessarily mutually exclusive to that. I mean, he could have just been, this still could have been the plan, I guess. Uh, but it's more like he's part of the cover up, right? Is what the implication, I guess, would be of him being named in this lawsuit.
I would have to imagine so. I personally have not read the lawsuit, but like if you're being named as somebody, in that kind of thing where your name is kind of redacted and then it's revealed later, that already is kind of like, okay, there's something going on here.
Right. So for the people that didn't read the 67 page complaint, um there were the only people named at in that original complaint were Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis. The others were named WWE Executive 1 through 4 and WWE Superstar. Well, we already know who the WWE Superstar was simply because the description could have only fit one person at that time. It was left very unambiguous, even though, and when I say description, I don't mean like height, weight, facial features, that kind of thing. Just that there's only one person that's been a WWE and UFC champion that was a man in in WWE. Ronda Rousey wasn't part of it. It was the other one. So there you go. Very limited pool of individuals, a pool of one that it could have been. So that's why if you're playing 2K24 right now and you feel like somebody's missing, that's the reason why. But the other ones were just named with numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they did not. You could have taken your guesses as to who those were, but those limitations described in the suit are not necessarily as narrowing as the Brock Lesnar one. So they could have technically been anybody, but it turns out that there was Nick Khan, as you said, was corporate officer number 1. Corporate officer number 2 is COO Brad Bloom. Corporate officer number 3, Stephanie McMahon. And corporate officer number 4, Brian Nurse, which was the former general counsel and head of WWE's legal department, as identified by this write-up I'm looking at. This is on Wrestling Inc., but the report comes from Tim Marchman, John Pollock, and Brandon Thurston for Front Office Sports. So whatever about them, never heard of them in my life. But that's where this is coming from. So let's take a look at this. All right, I'll read this from the Max Everett article. Before their naming in the report, Khan and Bloom were alleged to have been instrumental to a scheme in which Grant had been employed in a completely undefined role, except for the understanding that she would remain a sexual slave to be used and trafficked by McMahon within WWE. Khan and Bloom are not personally accused of sexual wrongdoing, but they are rather part of a group that is claimed to have facilitated and covered up exploitation in a way that would make WWE liable under a federal anti-trafficking law. Reference online resumes. Yeah, they're identified. I guess they identified them by cross-referencing details within the filing with other records like online resumes and corporate filings. So people have been digging into this on their own. Is basically what it was saying, because like I said, originally they were not named in the complaint. But they also say that all the names were confirmed with Janelle Grant's attorney and Callis. So I guess they were like, is it them? And she says, yes. I guess is the short version of that.
So if they're getting named, that means shit's about to go down. That'd be my guess.
Right. Poor choice of words, perhaps, but yes, I believe that is what that's what we're looking at. I would say that it's definitely a bad look for Nick Khan, but I don't know how he could have avoided some sort of involvement in all this. Like, because of his presence, the level of his authority and stuff, like he would have had to get mixed into this, whether whatever he's innocent of or not. He had to be around it. And just my own hunches and my own life experiences and my own dealings with sort of work environments and everybody that's had a job, no matter what level it is, whether it's at a local level, a corporate level, whatever, when you have jobs with these people, like this stuff sort of gets around, and everybody is, at times has the potential to be implicated in things that is none of their business and they don't want to be a part of. You could technically say, anytime you ever answered a yes or no question that somebody asked you and you didn't even know the further meanings of it, you could be, part of a cover-up of some kind, unwittingly.
Yeah, the old adage, you lie down with dogs, you come up with fleas.
Right. So, I don't now having read through the lawsuit once and having these people be anonymous in the lawsuit, I'm not going to read it again. I'm going to make that clear. I'm not going back and rereading it now, and I'm not going to plug these names in, but
did you hear that it was played on Cash Rating the Mark? Somebody made an AI of Vince's voice reading those text messages.
yes, I did.
That was one of the most fucked up things.
But rather I didn't hear it. But yeah, so right. Then it goes on to talk about Stephanie McMahon as corporate officer number 3. Hold on. Liz says, see, my question is, why are they confirming this when the names were left out for a reason? The names had to be leaked in order to stir this up now.
That's why I think his shoe's about to drop.
Yeah. The confirming is being done by the, Ann Callis and their legal team. But it's like these people, I don't know why they was going to come out eventually. You can't have like a trial and say, we now call to the stand WWE corporate officer number 1. So like we were always going to find this out, but what if I'm understanding what I'm looking at correctly, there's a clickable link for Front Office Sports. It's just looks like a website. So it's like they chose to look into this and cross-reference it themselves. And they reached out to Ann Callis to confirm the names. So whatever reason that Ann Callis thought that it was, that confirming the names was the course of action to take, I don't know. I can't say. This is beyond my understanding in terms of like legal matters or stuff that I'd have to ask Jeff Littman what, anything about this stuff if he knows. Other than that, but let's go on with this part where Grant attended meetings with the executive committee, WWE's executive committee, which was noted to be above her pay grade and something she had even inquired to Khan and Bloom about regarding appropriateness. The suit alleged Stephanie McMahon had motioned for Grant to sit near her in these meetings. Ms. McMahon is also described as knowing of other instances of McMahon engaging in inappropriate sexual sexual. All right. So basically what they're saying is Stephanie knew of the other stuff that's happened in the past, whatever that is. That's basically what this is saying. So you could take your guesses as to what those previous instances were. I think we all have our own ideas.
Yeah, it ain't hard to connect the dots on that one.
Yeah. All right. So after the $3 million NDA was signed, 3 months after, that's when Stephanie took the leave of absence in 2022. And then after the original WWE board of directors probe, that's when Vince McMahon retired in a tweet, and that's when Stephanie came back in and became the interim CEO and chairperson. And then he forced his way back on in early 2023, and that's when Stephanie resigned again. That was co-CEOs with Nick Khan. It hasn't been returned. Now, so probably for a long time, even before this, Stephanie had probably been ready to be done with all this. Even besides like the sexual misconduct and everything, just the way the company had been, I think she just sort of saw like this. Okay, now this is all speculation. We don't know, but this my personal speculation has always been and will continue to be. So we're going to push my narrative here. That and shout outs to EC3, control your narrative, I'm controlling my narrative, just like just like my good buddy EC3 would want me to. Um, it it was always the idea to me that Triple H expected at one point in time. I don't know when in his life he decided that he would do this, but I always assumed that he just thought that one day the WWE would be left to him, or that he could run it or be in control of it somehow in whatever fashion that would be. Kind of like a torch passing on the corporate side of like, he loved WWE so much that once his in-ring days were done, he wanted to continue to, you know, drive the company forward, uh, and make his legacy in terms of what wrestling could be. You know, I think that's what he really ultimately what he wanted to do. Don't know when. Don't even know if that's exactly it or if he even knew it consciously that that's what he wanted to do. But I've always imagined that he had much bigger dreams for himself after his in-ring career. I don't think he just wanted to be a top wrestler. I think he loves wrestling so much that he wanted to be a bigger contributor in the grand, you know, scheme of history. And I guess he always just assumed that, you know, one day that could be him, especially after, you know, he married Stephanie. I thought that it's like, again, this is just, don't take it as a fact or anything. But in my mind, I always just think like, I'm not saying Triple H doesn't love Stephanie. I'm saying he can learn to love her, right? Like that's the kind of the approach that I thought that he's taking with all this. Like, well, this is one way to secure, you know, my place in history forever, is to do stuff like this. So perhaps they together thought that as a husband and wife couple, it would just be natural for one day whenever Vince decided it was time, well, time to retire. Maybe not, they didn't think about it, he would do it in a tweet, but whenever that day came, they would just sort of naturally like inherit the business. So yeah, like Liz said, two things can be true at the same time. Exactly. You learn to love her. Whether you like her, whether you don't like her. Learn to love her. Um, so, you know, when things weren't looking like that was going to happen, um, perhaps directly because of Vince's opposition to his daughter ever marrying somebody like Triple H, and who knows, maybe Vince McMahon opposed his daughter ever getting married, period. Maybe he just doesn't like the idea of that, you know? So there's got to have been some sort of a heat between him and Paul, and it just, Paul's dream looked like it wasn't going to be realized. So perhaps this whole thing has caused like a rift between everybody in different ways. And Stephanie just thinking like she wants to just be done with this. Like now that they have a family, she's looking at things as like more important than that. Like I don't need to be a part of this. If Paul still wants to be the head of the WWE one day, that's fine. He can do that. I can be a mom. I can do other things. I don't need to be involved in this corporate mess. And the fact that my dad's stepping out every 5 seconds with everybody that comes along, it makes this an even easier decision because I'm tired of dealing with it. I'm tired of covering it up. I'm tired of knowing about it, hearing about it. I could see how you know, just like Janelle Grant, you may be willing to put up with things because each time you're doing something, you think it may be the last time because there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And then once you realize that the rainbow is just an illusion and so is the pot of gold, you know, like maybe you decide, okay, enough's enough. So that's just, you know, that's how I look at that. What do you think, Brandon? Do you think that's feasible?
I mean, definitely. I mean, again, you got to look at the situation that Janelle Grant was personally in at the time, or at like she claims. And yeah, desperate people do desperate things, and they're willing to put themselves through stuff if they think it's going to make them better in the end, or they're going to be better off when it's all said and done. And then when you get there, it's like, no, it wasn't.
Right. Yeah, it's not like there was a roadmap laid out. Like, okay, look, I got to do all this stuff to you before you get $3 million or whatever. But even that wasn't the thing. The whole thing started because she thought she was just getting a job. And then that's what details in the lawsuit, the story. It reads kind of like a story, a very sad and disturbing story, but like the idea of her not having a job and needing a job and getting a job. So she thinks she's going to work at the WWE in the corporate office. And just like if you or I were told that we just got a job at WWE headquarters with no formal experience and this kind of a thing. So like if we show up in Stanford or whatever and they're just like, all right, here's your office, here's the meetings, here's all this stuff, and we're just like faking it, right? Like we don't okay, what do I do here? Right? Like you didn't get any there was no job training, there was no nothing. Like so you just show up and people are telling you stuff and you're just like, okay, and then your job isn't actually real, like you don't have a real position, like so everybody's looking at you like, what is she doing here? And then they're like, oh wait, I know what she's doing here. Before even the first instance of assault that's detailed in the suit, Janelle Grant is describing the awkwardness of being put into a work environment that makes no sense to her and she isn't told anything, which I have to think is part of the sort of McMahon humiliation ritual that he gets off on.
Yep. Alienating you from your coworkers.
Alienates you from your coworkers, make you feel uncomfortable, make you more, vulnerable to whatever, But the whole thing is she thinks she's supposed to get a legit job. I mean, she had no reason not to believe that was the case, and then things go on from there. And it's like, yeah, if you would have told her from the get-go, okay, this is all the stuff that's going to happen, you want to do it, she would have said no thank you. But it all started with her thinking it was just a legit employment. So corporate officer number 4, Brian Nurse, like I said, the head of WWE's legal department, he's the one that offered the role to Janelle at the behest of Vince McMahon. So Nurse is claimed to have been terminated or asked to resign as one of a number of employees forced to resign or let go if they knew of McMahon's exploits and failed to assist, support, or facilitate them. So once again, I don't remember the details of corporate officer number 4 in the full complaint. But what this sounds like is that he wasn't cool with it, so he either resigned or was fired. I don't know how long he worked there before all this happened. So there may be more details on some of this stuff on the Front Office Sports website and their article. But it definitely, there definitely is. So if you're interested in that, then, frontofficesports.com, they got a long sort of article detailing this stuff. So yeah, any closing thoughts on that?
I think we're just gonna keep seeing more leading up to WrestleMania. I mean, they're gonna want to hit him where the intention is the hardest, or the spotlight's the brightest.
Yeah. Well, here we go. Well, now you've got.
I think it's going to be a slow drip too, just to keep you hooked, and so that, like, once the attention starts dripping, oh, here's a little something new, and then once that starts dipping, oh, here's a little something new.
I suppose that is the quote-unquote plan. But the Nick Khan is the biggest news there because he's still heavily involved in everything that the WWE is doing going forward. So I guess we will learn the extent of his involvement with a slow drip going forward.
We shall see.
Any other hot and fresh news straight out your mama's kitchen? Shout outs to Red Velvet.
Miro and CJ Perry have split.
Oh no. Um, guess that is a thing. Uh, so apparently, according to this report, it's a report. Apparently, their marriage ended late 2023. Um, but man, so 7 years, and the wrestling business claims another couple. Um, no official divorce filing. Uh, CJ Perry told TMZ this. I don't know how that came about. Did they run up to her on the street, like at NXT?
Wait, so no official divorce filings yet?
That's what it says.
Again, this is the wrestling business, and it just came out of nowhere. How do we know it's not a work? You always have to, you always got to keep that in the back of your head.
Yeah, you always do, don't you? But I mean, we'll see. But that's sort of been their gimmick on AEW Collision, is that she is managing other talent, and Miro is beating up the talent. However, they kind of put a stop to that when she went in the hospital, and so I don't know if that's going to be a thing still, since they both still technically work there. Um, Now, famously, these two uh, originally caught a bunch of heat for not staying in gimmick when she was supposed to be messing around with Dolph Ziggler, and they had her kissing him all the damn time on TV back when they were engaged. And then they announced, or when they were dating, and then they announced their engagement right in the middle of that storyline. So they got a lot of heat for that. So they have a history of not following kayfabe on social media. So it would be funny if they started doing it now, like to play along with their current angle that hasn't even been on TV for how many weeks.
You know what? That would be a great way to reintroduce it back to TV.
Yeah, and of course, the last person that CJ Perry represented on AEW was Andrade. So how'd that work out?
That timing does seem to fit. Like if this were work, this would be great timing for them to be doing it.
Yeah. Well, without knowing I can speculate a lot less, not knowing their contract details or other such things. But I mean, I guess we'll have to stay tuned to this too. Not that I really care, but you know, it is hot and fresh news. Apparently, well, it's actually kind of cold news that somebody found laying around because, like I said, she uh, supposedly they broke up at the end of last year, so a little late, but still, TMZ, they're on it. Um, but this is her statement to TMZ. Miro and I have made the difficult decision to separate after many wonderful years together, and have decided to move on as friends and hopefully on-screen characters somewhere down the road. Like right now, you're supposed to be on-screen characters right now. Get back to work, both of you. The fuck? Get back to work. Well, I can't blame them for not getting booked, but I can definitely see them like I can definitely see Miro just sort of like not caring. Like there's people that are like in AEW that want out, and I can just see how they would just sort of push back against anything that was sort of brought to them as far as creative is concerned, because they don't care. Like, I'm not going to do any shitty creative that I don't want to do.
And if I get
Um,
fired, that's a double win.
right. That's exactly it. Like, if they were really wanting to stay there, they'd be more willing to go along with stuff, right? Is the way I feel about it. So up to this point, for a lot of people that, you know, that have felt that way, Tony's been calling their bluff. Uh, the House of Black is still there. Miro and CJ are still there. Matter of fact, CJ went there. She didn't have to go there, but she signed there. So that must have been at a point in time when she thought she wasn't going back to WWE. And after what we just spent the first 20 minutes talking about, you can kind of understand why she wouldn't want to work there anymore. Right? I mean, just thinking of that angle that she was doing, where it's like, they know that this is a real life couple, and they're like, well, you're going to be with Dolph Ziggler and you're going to make out with him on television. It's like, what do you,
Bobby Lashley?
Bobby Lashley? Like, what is that? Like,
100% intended just to fuck with them. That's all that angle was.
right. It didn't do any business. I mean, people said they enjoyed the soap opera-ness of it, but, you know, I think they would look at it with a different lens now. Like, looking backwards. Now, I didn't need a lens back in 2016 or whenever they were doing this bullshit. I didn't need that lens. I could see it right then for what it was, but, you know, we just didn't have all these facts. So,
dude, that early mid 2000s stuff with Vince and the women on TV, like, oof, that hits way different now.
yep. So yeah, so there's that. Well, hopefully they they each find their own path to happiness and success. Yes, it was cringe, as Liz says.
Agreed, it was. It's just now it's just like, ugh.
Just
Like
everything.
way worse. Worse.
Everything they did. You know, that's the key word: humiliation. That's the word. Think about it. Remember when everything Bobby
Kiss
Lashley
my ass
did
club.
when he came back? Think about that. Like, he was just out there just literally bending over on camera. Like, that was a thing that they were doing. Hey, let's have this humongous physical specimen bend over and show his ass. He damn near, I thought he was going to start doing the Ace Ventura thing. Like, why is this even happening right now? Why am I looking at this? Why is Leo Rush dancing around this guy, proclaiming that we should all stare at him as he bends over? Like, this is the weirdest thing. And now it's like, yes, of course. That's why.
Humiliation ritual is real.
Yeah, so.
And I think, like, when Vince did it, it was more for his own ego and satisfaction, but also kind of probably a little bit like, I want to emulate the big boys.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly him. I'm sure that's something that Vince McMahon has always struggled with, the inferiority and the superiority, constantly and locked in an arm wrestling match with each other. Like, he's not as big as the big boys, but he thinks he's better than them still, so.
Yeah, and doing that stuff on camera, like, satisfies both of that.
Wow. Well, there you go. Well, any other news?
TNA had a couple of shows this past week.
Oh, did they? Well, I suppose we could talk about it. If everybody else doesn't mind.
I thought this was the Vince attack.
The Vince attack.
Yeah, pal.
Yeah, well, I don't know. How you? I mean, TNA did fire their sort of like top guy too. So, there are some parallels.
Yeah, but I'm sure he probably wasn't shitting on people and simulating rape.
Simulating?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is not. This stuff's really not funny, but like, you got to cope somehow.
We're coping. We're
yeah.
coping. It's not a. Yeah, we don't really think it's funny. But we also, for our audience, we probably don't need to tell you that. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys know. But yeah, we'll do our own other brand of coping too as we work through these reviews. So we're going to talk about this episode of TNA Impact, which came to you on March 7th. And it's from New Orleans still, part of the New Orleans tapings. Of course, you get your ketchup packet to start, but other than that, it's pretty cold to start because we have Ali coming out, and he's going to have a match with Kevin Knight here. Young Kevin Knight. Now, I guess before we get too far into it, we got our weekly. Ooh, is that a ketchup packet?
It is.
That's Heinz, right? It's the only acceptable ketchup.
It is.
Yep, that's right.
And so special ones too, where you can like dip and peel, or you can just pull it off and squeeze it.
That's right. That's awesome. You hear that, Hitman? No Hunt's ketchup here. You're not drinking that watered down trash, okay? It's real thick Heinz ketchup. But there he goes. There he is. I didn't even know if he was watching, but we know. So yeah, there it is. There it is. So anyway, we got our weekly question from Chris Winland, who was asking, like, he said, he actually, quite a compliment to us. He says that listening to our shows has gotten him to check out TNA more. So thank you very much. That's a very nice thing to say. That's kind of, that I wouldn't say that's our intention. We definitely don't want you to have to suffer through this. We look at it more as like we take this burden upon ourselves for you. Very Christ-like in our endeavors. But if you are enjoying it, then that is good. And he asked, like, are there any young talents that we think could break out? And that was reminded of this because you answered on Twitter that Kevin Knight was definitely one of those, right? Because he said that Kevin Knight jumps out to him. You agree with Kevin Knight, and then you also said
Joe Hendry.
So
granted, he's not. Granted, he's not really that young, but as far as like exposure and how much attention he's gotten, he is still relatively new.
Yeah, relative. And major American promotions, really, I've only seen Joe Hendry here in TNA and in MLW. So there's definitely room for him to get out onto a bigger stage.
I would be very surprised if he doesn't end up in WWE at some point. Like, he looks like somebody they would want.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it almost seems like his gimmick that he's come up with, where he like sings about his opponents. I mean, he's done that even in MLW. Like, that was in any form or fashion that I've seen him in. He does some version of singing about his opponents or himself. So, like, that's a big part of it. And it's almost like coming up with that gimmick was him like future proofing himself for a WWE run, because that kind of, that level of comedy is something that they definitely like lean into a lot. So
dude,
he's trying to sports entertainment himself.
How about a pairing of him and R-Truth?
Well, that would be the greatest tag team of all time, wouldn't it? Would it not?
So, dude, the stuff that they could produce together.
Yeah. So I would like to see that. And so I would agree that if you want to put him in that young category of breakout people, like he's definitely, never mind the fact that unlike a lot of guys that are big gimmick, he's actually a big guy. So it's like he looks the part. handsome, charisma, gimmick that fits sports entertainment, can go in the ring pretty much, certainly well enough. I mean, there's really nothing left for him to do. He's checked all the boxes he needs to check. Now it's just time for him to get a check. That's all. Um, Kevin Knight's another one. You just see him and you're just like, yeah, this guy could be something. And part of that is that that sort of the New Japan grounding in the training. You know, like a lot of guys get in there and you know, they get on the indies and they've seen all the guys do things that they wanted to do, so they focus on that, and then they didn't really get as much of fundamentals. They skip as many of the fundamentals as they can so that they can start jumping on guys. You know, you see that a lot in indie wrestlers.
With Knight,
with
I'm gonna give it to the Kushida effect.
Yeah, guys like Kushida, taking him under the wing, showing him all those, keeping him on those fundamentals, and you know, his training in the LA dojo. Like they don't let, you know, they don't necessarily train guys in, you know, topes and stuff. You have to, you know, their level of training is a lot of conditioning and basics. The young lions are not allowed to do moves. They have a limited amount of moves they're even allowed to perform in matches. You know, it's basically like a shoulder tackle, a body slam, you know, a Boston crab or whatever. Like you're not allowed to do stuff. So you have to be able to get over and work your matches, and then you have to work on your intensity. You have to work on your footwork and everything, all those like the mechanical aspects of it. And that's it. You have to just continually use the fundamentals before you're allowed to break out. So that's probably a big reason why you see Kevin Knight, even though he didn't go through the full Japan dojo, I'm sure he did some time in LA, the LA dojo. So he got like at least some version of that. I believe Shibata was running that at the time that he would have been there. So there you go. As for me, I don't know if, I mean, she's definitely a young talent. I just keep forgetting how young she is because how good she is. But Masha Slamovich needs to be out of there for several reasons. But she's too good, and she needs a bigger stage to be good on. And it's easier to look at the women for me because there's more room for upward mobility in women's divisions, whether it's WWE or AEW or whatever, because if we're considering them going to like those as like the major leagues, like I assume that's what this question's really about, which is its own conversation in and of itself, of like whether that's a good mindset to have. It's so, but I look at Masha as somebody that's like, she could go in and she could be a main event player in WWE right now, like skill set alone. If she does her presentation correctly, which she has been, there's no reason she couldn't fit in. As for the men, you know, like when we're talking about a Joe Hendry, like we like Joe Hendry, and he's got that, you know, we've got that idea for, you got the idea for R-Truth or whatever, but it's kind of crowded at the top, right? Like their main event scene is so stacked that it's really, really difficult to make time on a show for that because you have so many guys that could be potential main eventers. You hardly have any room for the undercard, so it's easier for guys to get lost there. And then AEW has a lot of wrestlers. Not as many of them are talented enough, in my opinion, to deserve those top spots, but there's just so many people on there, it's easier to get lost in the shuffle there. So their women's divisions, on the other hand, not necessarily. They need real top stars in both those women's divisions. And Masha Slamovich is as good as anyone, you know, like anybody out there, you know, pretty much, including men. So that's who I would say people need to watch out, and people need to have an eye on her. Um, and so that's my answer for that. Anybody else you can think of while we were discussing this?
No, I agree with you on Masha. I think she'd be a great fit in the WWE Women's Division. Like the way it's at right now, you just have all these just what's the best way to describe it? Like a lot of cookie cutter factory produced ones. Introducing her as like the chaos element and ripping through them could be interesting.
Right. Yeah, she's different than pretty much everybody there. Um, like I think if you look at somebody like Valhalla, who's like a Viking, like she's sort of portrayed as like she could be a savage, but she's not good. That's the
Right.
difference.
Like that could be the first match you build to. Like once you
Yeah.
get Masha established and like, okay, that's the first real program that she has.
Right. And you know, Shayna Baszler's sort of been like she's been floating around lost for several years now. And right currently she's in a tag team with Zoe Stark for whatever reason. Probably because in real life they get along, so they probably like, let's do a tag team right now.
Hey,
But
you're a friend. You're a
yeah,
friend. You're a tag team.
are you
Hey.
some kind of smartass? Uh, so, so, but I think a pairing of Shayna and Masha would be as interesting because you have sort of like a refined violence versus an unbridled violence, right?
Dude, and can you imagine like you could actually have the vignettes of Shayna refining Masha's offense, like teaching her like grappling and submission and tightening it up.
Yeah, you could do that. The only pushback I would have on myself is that
That takes away what makes Masha unique.
a little bit, and more importantly in the bigger picture, uh I don't know how much depth or future there is in the tag team division. So it's like just putting these women together in tag teams, like I see something you could do there, but then at the same time I also am like but I don't know. I would like to get, if we need to really refocus the WWE Women's Tag Team division. But this is a TNA review. So let's get back to that, because this all started with Kevin Knight. He's going to take on Ali in this opening match. They're having a match, and then the Good Hands walk down, and they are, before they can even think about doing anything, they're assaulted by Sabin and Kushida, which gets the ref's attention, and then Ali gets a championship belt in his hands, and well, um, he hits Kevin Knight with it and gets the 1, 2, 3. So there answers the question of, is Ali a heel for sure or not? And we see that he's willing to take shortcuts, and then afterwards, you know, they do the 450-degree splash to Kevin Knight's arm. Seems like overkill. Maybe you could just jump down and step on it, but whatever. Just do your 450 on his arm, and then Shelly finally runs in late with a crutch. Whose crutch is that? What was it being used for? I don't know.
Never followed up on.
Well, I don't think he brought it out for Kevin either, because I don't think the crutch is going to help him, since it was his arm that was hurt. So I can't make any sense of where the crutch came from, but you know, there he was, just a little bit late, which didn't mean anything at the time, but may grow to mean something as we continue to talk about these things. What are your thoughts on this sort of cold opening match and how it led into angles for later?
I mean, I like the business it got done. I think it could have got done in a short amount of time.
Really? You think it was too long?
Maybe a minute or two could have been shaved off.
Well, all right. Or we could have just got rid of this package for Zaya Brookside, Tasha Steeles, and Jordan Grace. Maybe we could have just cut that out, because we're going to see the same exact thing on the Sacrifice.
It's Sacrifice.
Yep. Yeah, there's no way you can't hear the word sacrifice and not think of Scott Steiner. Mm. All right, so then um they're getting Kevin Knight checked out in the back, and they're telling him he's not going to be able to go at Sacrifice. I'm not going to do this. I can't do the high pitch voice. So Alex Shelley's like volunteers to take his place, and then they have like a little sort of dissension here because he's still upset that Kushida threw in the towel on his title match. So that's what their story they're telling here. Time Machine's got a little rift, if you will, in it. Even though, like, again, this shouldn't be a babyface problem. Getting mad at somebody for looking out for your well-being, you know.
Shelley would
Kind
do
of
that.
heelish.
Shelley would react that way.
Shelley would. So he's definitely made it clear that he's not subscribing to 100% of either moral philosophy here. But what's interesting about that idea is that it almost feels like this would have worked better if it was if it was Sabin somehow that Kushida had cost something, because Kushida and Shelley are the original team. They've known each other for a long time. You know, as the Time Splitters, they've been a team for a very long time. So if anybody knows each other and has a problem, like, it seems like it shouldn't be at this point. It's a little late for him to start questioning his longtime partner. Whereas with Sabin, it's like, yes, Sabin is friends with Alex Shelley and partners with Alex Shelley, and by extension, Kushida is a partner and friend, but they weren't the tag team. So I think it's interesting that the actual tag team of the Time Splitters doesn't trust his partner. You see what I mean? Like, it's you know, I don't know. It's interesting. I'll say it's interesting, and that's all I'll say. Any other notes?
No, I like that they followed this up, and they continue to keep following it up.
Okay. Well, they're following up Ash by Elegance's promise that she would have her second match. And it is against somebody named Angel Blue. And Angel Blue is shooed out of the ring by the concierge so that he can introduce Ash by Elegance. She comes out. It's the same deal. She's very gesticulating versus you know, her eventual when the bell rings, then she turns into a savage street fighter. So once again, we're going with that dichotomy there, which is fine. Any other notes or thoughts on this? You already know who wins.
I like the dichotomy. It's just that she just really needs to slow down, like a lot of the strikes and the stomps in the corner. Like, hit one letter, like give it a second, let it register. Hit the next one, give it a second, let it register. Instead of just stomp, 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 stomp.
I don't know. Again, I have to disagree. I think the frenzy is part of the presentation. Personally, it's like taking. It's like if a group of sharks, you know, smells blood in the water, and it's like, hey guys, take your turn, one bite at a time. You know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if thinking about it again, like when you compare it, like, before and after the bell rings, then if you want to make as much of a polar opposite as possible, then yeah, you would have to do it that way.
Yeah. It's almost like it's totally different, but yet I see this. I'm trying to think of other times in wrestling where this has happened. You had Festus, who came alive when the bell rang, and or like Mankind, which had to be soothed with piano music on his outro. Even though he just got done savagely beating somebody up, or like any of those times where somebody just turns into a Tasmanian devil when the bell rings, and then goes back to whatever they were doing afterwards. It's like, I think that's what they're going for here. So, So I'm okay with that if they do it. It's certainly the best presentation I've seen for Dana Brooke, so it's working for her, I guess. I don't mind it. Um, a little silly, but compared to some of the stuff that we're going to talk about, it's quite okay. Uh, well, here's one. So Burt Macklin zooms in from his hotel room. Um, why is he in his hotel room instead of at work? I don't know. Uh, but he's letting us know, who is he zooming to? Like, who's on the other end of this Zoom? Does he go directly into the Impact feed, even though this is a taped show? I don't know. Don't ask questions. Don't ask questions, Vet. It's just wrestling, is what I think I would be told. Um, but I have to ask these questions because I'm me. So anyway, so he's doing this Zoom promo rather than coming to work. He's doing the work from home thing, I guess, or hotel. He came all the way to New Orleans to sit in a hotel room while everybody else is having matches. But then all of a sudden some commotion, and then we lose the internet signal, and I was like, whoa, what is this, my house? And then you know, it turns out that Dolph Ziggler beat him up in his hotel room. um it said Steve Macklin's connection is unstable or something like that, right? And on the screen somehow, I guess, just even the internet is like, I don't want to see Dolph, let's cut out. Like, is basically how I took that. And then they leave Macklin, and he's got the, he's lying there in the camera, which, perfection. He's got his Dolph picks up the thing and promos the camera, the laptop, whatever it is, to whoever's it going to. And then Macklin's down on the floor, and he's got the little tag on his face, like, what did it say exactly? It's like, it's a do not disturb tag, but what does their version say?
I think it was like something sleep well or something like that. I don't remember.
It's like, maybe it's like, please later, please. Is that what? Or like, come back later, please, or it's one of those. So yeah, what'd you think of this?
I thought it was decent. I mean, just something to kind of advance the story. Just a quick little thing, character development, not a whole lot, but at least it maintained the angle.
It was different, that's for sure.
At least they're trying new things. I will give them that.
Well, all right. Well, speaking of trying new things, the Good Hands are next, and they are wearing the Masha Slamovich collection, which is which is all the rage here as we get ready to go to spring. If you don't know what I mean, it's basically like white. It's like white and red with blood splatter. And they're going to take on the Time Splitters. That's what they're announced as? But was this not? Was this was Sabin and Kushida version?
I do not remember. I
Or was it
want to
Shelley?
say, yeah, it was Shelley, because I think they're trying to sell that him and Kushida are on the same page. Yeah, they're on the same page going into the pay-per-view.
That's right. I didn't make that note, but here later, when I just skip to the finish, I say Skylar taps to the hoverboard lock, and the Time Splitters argue afterwards. So whatever they were arguing about is something that happened in the match that I might have missed, and I wasn't going to rewind. So what do you?
Yeah, think? there were a couple miscommunication spots in there.
Do you happen to remember what they were, or
not off the top of my head? Just that they happened.
I know there was one where, like, either he bumped him on the apron or he almost did. Which is just, again, for guys that have been in a tag team for over 10 years, it's like, really? Are we going to do this now? This is more for like a Shayna and Zoe type thing, wouldn't you say? Not a long tenured tag team. Like, Alex Shelley has 2 long tenured tag teams with different partners. I don't
and they're together in the same faction.
Shit doesn't work. Sorry, what'd you say?
And they're all together in the same faction.
Right. Um. So yeah. Yeah, but it's the good hand. So you kind of even for I was gonna be mad if they won anyway. But yeah, I did like how Kushida sort of took over and won, at the end, and it was fine, but I'm always a big advocate of less good hands on my television, but whatever.
I would have said that it should have been the finish should have been a miscommunication that the good hands get the win off of. But then when I saw where they were going afterwards, it's like, okay, now it makes sense why they lost.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, we'll get there too. So then our next thing is a vignette of Oleg Dango Bravo, or as they call it, the real ODB of TNA. Here they're saying that they want to wrestle every tag team that has less than 1 year of experience, and they push the wrestling school. I think he said for $60 a head.
They also they referenced that TNA or the Tag Team Armageddon thing that the Hardy Boys did. So they said, like, are we on the compound right now?
Yeah, there was a bunch of references here. I didn't even catch them all. But I mean, these things are funny. They're inside. Some of it's really way inside, which is fine, I guess. Like if you're gonna expose a business, it's better to do it in a way that most people probably wouldn't know what you were talking about. This is kind of like, I think that's the best way to do it if you're gonna do it. So
he
some
does
of the
it.
stuff is pretty funny.
The way he does, he's like, okay, what's he talking about? I'm gonna go Google that, and then you go find out. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah, used to not be able to just Google stuff, so it really worked differently in the 80s and 90s when people would make these inside references. But yeah, do you have any other notes on the little gimmick here?
I smell what you're cooking.
Gotcha. So the good hands apologize to Ali for not only opening match but also losing just now. And he says that they're going to go in a different direction, and he brings in the grizzled young vets to replace them. Even though the good hands were apologizing, I think everybody should apologize for these pastel lights they got on the background. Like, I know Easter's coming up, but like, come on, hashtag turn off the lights, guys. Don't make me revive the campaign. Don't make me.
D'Amore's gone.
Son of a bitch. All right. So this is what you mean when you say this is part of the good hands booking. Like, they need to lose in order for this to make sense. It makes less sense to replace them with another tag team if they are getting wins, right? So this is all a good, this is part of that.
Right. It made sense. Why would Ali want to keep people around who can't get the job done?
Mm-hmm. Even though Grizzly Young Vets haven't got the job done in anything that they
exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking of too.
But that's fine. If a heel is a contradictory character, that's fine. Here's what's not fine. Masha Slamovich versus Danny Luna. Now,
yeah, this was bad. Yeah, I didn't like this. Wrong person went over.
Wrong person wins. First of all, how quickly we forget the long undefeated Masha Slamovich Goldberg-like streak. Secondly, we've already
it was 3-minute matches.
Secondly, we've already illustrated how Danny Luna needs work. So here's a match where she can learn a lot, but I just don't like the idea of her going over. It was pretty straight up, like relatively straight up, and I don't like that. There's a star here, and it ain't Danny Luna, unfortunately. I'm sorry. And you're not going to be, even if you are going to be a star someday, you're not going to make it off the back of Masha in this one match. So you shouldn't be doing stuff like this. And again, looking forward to the future in retrospect for what you're doing, this is not the way to go about things. This definitely should have been a Masha Slamovich dominant win. Uh, and I'll tell you why later, but that's how I felt. However, since I did get to see Masha wrestle a match, I was at least pleased with that. That's my a la carte. Like I'm ordering one Masha Slamovich singles match, which you don't always get now, and therefore from that point I was satisfied, but I don't like the booking.
And I think we might be thinking the same thing of why it should have been a dominant Masha win. And I think we're going to get to that at Sacrifice.
That's right. There was a 100% chance that Masha should have won this match, but they didn't go with it. All right. Next is Alan Angels, who makes his entrance, and he is unconcerned that he has to face PCO. He's smugly walking down like there's nothing wrong in the world, even though he knows he's going to be wrestling PCO. So right off the bat, this guy's clueless.
I think he's playing like one of those heel characters where he legit thinks like he could take somebody who's twice his size, and he's cocky and arrogant about it. Kind of like, remember when Bob Holly was doing the big shot gimmick?
Yeah.
Kind of like that a little.
Well, Bob Holly was legitimately a tough guy. And he also has eaten sandwiches wider than Alan Angels' shoulders. So maybe that's a good gimmick for Bob Holly, not so much for Alan Angels. But no matter who you are, you should, as a shoot or in kayfabe, you should have reservations about facing PCO in a match. So at the very least, I would have liked to have seen some level of subtle nervousness in his entrance. But whatever, who cares? This don't take long. PCO salt. And then Khan comes out, and he's going to attack PCO, of course. They're going to get in a fight, and Angel's like, yeah, Khan, get him. Even though he just got beat, he's fine. He's cheering on Khan, and then Khan drags him outside and breaks his neck like Zeus. And then they go and have he and PCO have a lightsaber fight, but with chairs.
I will say at least that the chair duel didn't at least look like shit because they're big enough to stand their ground, swing, not stumble, and then be able to swing again.
But everything else?
Everything else was ugh.
Sorry, man. I don't like to, PCO's been around for a long time. The guy, not really the character, but the guy, so I don't take any pleasure in shaking my head every time he comes on the screen, but it is what it is. It's bad. So calling it what it is.
Be what it be.
Hey, were you gonna say something?
I just said it be what it be.
It be what it be. This would it be over here on Explosion. Crazy Steve beat Rhino. Yeah, I didn't watch, so I'm glad they reminded me what happened here.
That's where the digital media title needs to stay. Explosion. That's your digital media show. That's your champion.
Yeah, so that I don't watch it. And then we get a vignette with Crazy Steve. It's the Crazy Steve style vignette. What do you think?
I mean, just another Crazy Steve vignette. I'd like to see him be in an actual meaningful angle and storyline rather than just random people and cutting promos on them.
Well, that's hoping for a lot, I would say. Eric Young's in the ring. He cuts a promo about how... What was it about? He just said a bunch of generic stuff. I mean, he was emotional about it. I'll give him that. He seemed like he was about to cry the whole time. But he definitely just said a bunch of generic stuff about being a babyface. Like, you may be bigger than me. You may be stronger than me. You may be faster than me. And I'm not going to do anything crazy like guarantee results, but I'm just going to keep coming. It's like, okay,
All right, you're not going
mental
over then.
note, mental note taken. I've got that in my mental notes that he said that. And then Moose answers. He comes out. He does his, his heelish, like long drawn out promos, which I could understand if someone was to tune in for the first time and see Moose doing this, they'd probably think his promos were bad because they wouldn't realize he's doing this on purpose to be a heel and get heat. Like he doesn't normally talk like this in real life, so he's trying to drag it out and get people frustrated. So I see what he's doing. And he teases that there could be a street fight right there tonight in New Orleans because they both like to fight. And then Fat Eddie and Fat Myers wearing suits jump Eric Young. And then Moose comes in, wraps himself in the chain that Alicia brings out, gives Eric Young the chain spear. And then ABC comes in and they've got chairs. They took the chairs out of PCO and Khan's hands and ran down there. They were probably still fighting with chairs, like right by the entrance, and ABC probably just came and just snatched both those chairs up and just ran out. They also made sure to bring their title belts for the run-in. Like Ace was wearing his belt. So Chris Bay's belt was loose, but it was still there. It's interesting. Ace had both belts, just looking out for his partner. So any comments for this big, go home angle for the title match at Sacrifice?
I saw this. The biggest thing was bad placement on the show. I think this is what should have closed it out. Like this is your main angle, this is your main story, and you're getting heat on the challenger. Like this is what should have went off the air with.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm surprised that it didn't. But anything else?
I mean, I thought it worked for what it was, but it, highly telegraphed, pretty already obvious conclusion what was going to happen.
Right. Well, your actual main event ends up being Dango versus Josh Alexander. So we knew this match was coming because we saw the thing last week. And Dango actually tried hard in this match. I'm saying that from a character standpoint, not like the guy, doesn't work hard in the ring, but I'm just saying like his character is usually different. But this one, it was like, he didn't try to take it. He seemed like he was trying to really win the match. So, it didn't work out. He ended up tapping to the ankle lock, but it was a nice main event. Good stuff between the guys. You get to see that. You get to see, the reminder that, yeah, Dango can go, when he wants to. That's not what his character is right now, but it makes it a little more interesting when you see it. But like you said, perhaps maybe not the way to close the show. And you're also not going to get, you have business with Hammerstone, but obviously he wasn't there. They just announced that they signed him. So that probably happened after they taped these shows. So he couldn't have been there. So you're not going to see anything with that. It's just, all right, Josh gets a win. Good night, everybody. Except, well, I mean, they ended it with like another package for Sacrifice. So if you weren't sure if you wanted to buy it or sign up for the TNA Plus app, one more chance to remind you, hey, these are the matches we got coming up. Don't you want to see them? And that's kind of how we go off the air here. So, any closing thoughts on the match and this episode?
No, I thought it was a decent match. I would like to see more Bravo and Prudy's involvement that Alexander has to overcome and makes him look better going into his match with Hammerstone. And I like that he went over with the ankle lock to show that, like, his other finishers actually beat people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll never, like, that kind of reminds me of a time when I forgot what I want to say it's like a 6-man tag match where it was Rock and I forgot who else, but they were against somebody else in the Dudley. It was Rock RVD and somebody else against Rhino and the Dudley Boys, and he pinned somebody with a spine buster. I forgot what it was. He hit the spine buster and actually pinned him. No, it was a DDT. So then after that, I started thinking, like, they kind of got it in my head. Okay, if he hits the DDT, I've seen him go over on somebody with it once before. It might happen again.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is a time where stuff like that is more important than ever, because you need to protect your finishes. So if you have other finishes that you can establish that you could use as false finishes, that lets you, you know, that lets you, wherever your spot is on the card, that could show you where you can have a finish and where you can use a false finish.
Exactly. Like if you have like a main event guy wrestling like a mid card guy, well, a main eventer should be able to pin that guy with a lesser move. So you see them go over with that move and you see him hit it in a main event versus main eventer match. You might think it's a believable false finish.
Mm-hmm. And additionally, when the mid card guy gets elevated, now that when that's a false finish where it used to beat him, now he kicks out and it's like, okay, he's leveled up. This is no longer enough to defeat him. It's a story that you're telling in there.
Yep, and now I remember why I thought of Spinebuster, because that actually happened in TNA one time with Rhino and Jesse Neal, where Rhino went over with the Spinebuster. And I'm watching that going, that makes perfect sense. I mean, this is a longtime veteran in Rhino, and this is a rookie kid. Yeah, he should pin him with a Spinebuster.
Right. Well, there you go. It's a very Japanese way to think, because that's how a lot of the better booking is done there. So here we are, Sacrifice now. But before we get to Sacrifice, before we get to Sacrifice, perhaps we'd like to punch up what we just saw. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get that done. All right, so we open up with our recap and catch-up packet. Then we go to our intro, pyro, and ballyhoo. And then go to the announce table, run down the card for the night, discuss events that happened last week. And then we cut to a pre-tape of the system at a restaurant where they talk about how they're taking the night off, getting ready for the pay-per-view, and they're going to have fun watching the show and giving their commentary.
Are they
So we go
zoom
to
in?
they have a camera person there with them.
Okay. No, okay.
So we go to match number 1, Kevin Knight versus Mustafa Ali. Kevin Knight music and entrance, Mustafa Ali music and entrance. We get a condensed version of the match we got on the show. Before we go to our first commercial break, come back with backstage, Time Machine and Knight. We get the same promo on the show with Shelley and Kushida taking a match with the Good Hands. Pre-tape, we have the system at the restaurant, and they give their commentary on the Time Machine issues. They kind of, I would imagine they brag about how they're kind of responsible for it. And we go to a Decay vignette. They talk about how they want whoever wins at Sacrifice, and then their attention is drawn off camera by someone they know, but it's not said or shown who it is before the video cuts. Match number 2 kind of moves stuff around. Alan Angels versus PCO. Alan Angels music and entrance, PCO music and entrance. Same match as we get on the show. Con out for the brawl. And then we go to another pre-tape of the system when they give their commentary on what they just saw. Then we go backstage with Shelley and Kushida, and they're still having disagreements as they walk to the ring. Commercial break in number 2, and then come back with match number 3, Time Splitters versus Good Hands. Good Hands music and entrance, Time Splitters music and entrance. Condensed version of the match we got on the show. Then we go to a pre-tape of the system where they talk about how Shelley's anger and frustration will end up being the end of Time Machine. Then we move to the pre-tape of Steve Macklin, which was the same one we saw on the show. And then match number 4, Ash by Elegance versus Angel Blue. Angel Blue already in the ring. Iceman out. And by the way, the guy's name, I think I read it somewhere. The dude's name is George Iceman, the guy who introduces or comes out with Ash by Elegance.
Okay.
She makes her entrance, same match as we get on the show. And then we go backstage with Ali and the Good Hands, where he replaces them with the Grizzled Young Vets. Then we go to a pre-tape of the system where they make fun of the Good Hands because Myers and Moose actually have history with them.
Mm-hmm.
However, as they're doing that, a car pulls up to the restaurant, and then go to our third commercial break. Come back with the Dango vignette, which is the same one we saw on the show. And then we go to match number 5, Dango versus Josh Alexander. Dango music and entrance with Prudis and Bravo. Alexander music and entrance, condensed version of the match on the show. And then we go to a pre-tape of the system where they give their commentary on the match before they are interrupted by the ABC, who jump them with weapons. Someone bumps into the camera and then the feed gets cut, which leads into our fourth commercial break. Come back to the announce table, explain what happened, and that ABC fled and they're on their way to the building and the system is right behind them. Go to match number 6, Masha Slamovich versus Danny Luna. Masha Slamovich music and entrance with Killer Kelly. Danny Luna music and entrance with Jody Threat. Same match as on the show, but Masha goes over this time. Then we go to a promo package with a Knockouts title match. And then a pre-tape of Mike Bailey and Trent Seven, and they arrive at Bailey's dojo. And the dojo has been vandalized by the Rascals. So keeping that story going. Backstage, we have ABC in the system. ABC arrive and get out of their car and run into the building. The system pulls up moments later, and they beat up on ABC's car before they enter the building. They say they're taking out ABC and Eric Young tonight. Then you go to our fifth and final commercial break. Come back with a New Japan hype video. Go to the announce table where they hype Sacrifice and run down the card for next week's show. Then we go to the in-ring with Eric Young. Eric Young music and entrance. Eric Young cuts the same promo that he does on the show. System comes out to beat down Young, but then ABC runs out with weapons, and then the system retreats, and the show ends with Eric Young and ABC standing tall.
Yeah, I mean, as tall as they can, because they're all very short. But I get what you mean. Well, there you go. I think we are sufficiently prepared for Sacrifice with that. If it shored up any of the shortcomings that the actual episode had. So we're going to count down to Sacrifice. You catch the countdown?
Did not have time, unfortunately.
Okay.
And
what
I only
about
saw
the rest of Sacrifice?
I saw all of it except for the last 2 matches, which I just saw the finishes to.
Oh my god! Look, Brandon, I understand if you have time constraints, but you got to at least watch Moose's match. You skip to the end and watch Moose's match if you have to. Oh. Well, anyway, well, on the countdown show, we had Crazy Steve versus Joe Hendry as a sort of a last minute thrown it into, the blah blah blah. It just they didn't announce this. It was just a last second thing. So what's funny about this? Crazy Steve comes out. I mean, he's the champion. He comes out first. Joe Hendry makes his he makes these unfunny jokes about, like, he didn't do a song for Steve, but he did, talk about how Crazy Steve through the years has had different things before he was crazy. So he shows like a picture of baby Steve, lazy Steve, and 80s Steve. Whatever. So it's not funny, but the whole time he's doing this, just like always, this Crazy Steve, he's crazy, guys. Don't remember, he'll fork you in an instant. He just sort of leans in the corner and politely waits for Joe Hendry to finish, so he's crazy. Which actually, and I was thinking, I was like, well, what would Crazy Steve do? Like, if you want to just let it keep going, one of the things he can do is, like, he can actually put over the jokes, because the jokes are bad. Like, they're really bad. This is bad. It's the worst thing Joe Hendry's ever done on television, I think. So he's out there, and if Crazy Steve with each successive one, Crazy Steve just starts laughing harder, and he like even goes over to Joe Hendry and like leans on his shoulder to keep from falling over.
Yep.
Like, that's crazy. Not
That would have worked. That definitely would have worked. To something like where he's just laughing along, going, "Keep going, keep going. You're just feeling your own demise. Keep going."
Right. And then Joe Hendry's more unsettled, like, all right, calm down. Like this isn't how I pictured this going. So many things, but that's what I mean. It's like when they give guys gimmicks, and again, no offense to Crazy Steve, but like, what about you? Why are you this? You know, like you're just a wrestler who uses a fork. You're not really doing anything crazy. So, well, you know, anyway. So he waits for him to finish, and he does finish. And then, right when Joe Hendry's about to hit his go home line, AJ Francis music hits, and then he goes to the commentary desk. And then they have their match. And then while the match is going on, um, Crazy Steve shit cans Joe Hendry and then fakes an injury so that the referee will go and check him out. And then during that, the camera is shooting that, and they miss AJ Francis getting up off the desk and doing something to Joe Hendry. I have no idea what he did to Joe Hendry because the camera fucking missed it. They cut back just in time to show him like rolling Joe Hendry back into the ring. And then Crazy Steve hits his DDT thing. So
They did show this during Sacrifice. A much better shot that he posted Joe.
okay, so he posted him. All right. Well, there you go. Originally, they missed it, and they missed a lot in this. Everything about this was probably not good, but whatever. Then we get the Rascals and Bert with Gia and no music underneath. And Bert explains that he will not be accompanying them for. And their next match is the Rascals versus Seven Ball. So these guys do stuff to each other, and then Trey goes for the spray paint, and he accidentally paints Zach when Mike Bailey or whoever ducks out of the way. So Zach has paint in his eyes, and then Trent Seven grabs him up in a dragon suplex full Nelson thing while Bailey kicks him in the face to take him over, and that's 1, 2, 3 for 1, 2, 3 for Seven Ball or Speedball Mountain, as they like to be called. So there you go.
Fun times.
Now we're at the main card from Windsor, Ontario. Our opening match is Burt Macklin, FBI, versus Dolph Ziggler, WWE. He's actually the New Japan Pro Wrestling Global Champion, but you wouldn't know it because he doesn't have the belt here with him. I guess I could understand them not wanting to give him that belt to carry around. He's probably not trustworthy at all. So here's the fun part. At least in the at least at least in the feed I watched, they literally lost the signal on this match. Did you see that?
I don't know. I watched it on the network.
Really? So the TNA Plus app had the whole thing.
Yep.
I guess they must have like re-uploaded it or something because this version they lost the signal. And I'm not talking about like, you know, whatever pirate transmission or whatever. Like they actually lost the signal on the show. Like there was constant interruptions throughout the show with like the bitrate quality went down several times. So I don't know. It was weird. But again, it was like my thing was like even the internet doesn't want to see Dolph Ziggler here. They even had like a graphic that said like lost signal on it, which it was crazy. I was like, is this a work? But it wasn't a work because this kept happening for like half the show. So if you didn't see any of that, then I can only assume that they just took like maybe you didn't watch it live, obviously, right?
No.
Okay. I'd be interested to see if that happened live because they could have just took what they recorded with their cameras and they could have just re-uploaded that onto the app without any problems. But perhaps if you were trying to watch it live, we know that TNA has had issues in the past with their audio and other things. So I'd be interested to hear if anybody else saw this. But yeah, they came back enough time to let me see that Dolph won, but big portions of this match were blocked out. But what about you, since you saw the whole thing?
I mean, it was all right. The guy that Ziggler is obviously going over.
He did.
Plus, with apparently, I think Macklin's got 5 months left on his contract. I think.
Mm.
And I would not be surprised if he goes over to AEW with his wife.
All Friends Wrestling. All right, well then we get the system with Gia, no music underneath. The feed didn't cut out here, but it did sort of again the bitrate quality dropped, so everybody looked like they were in like 120p. I mean, they didn't really say anything special, just generic stuff.
The system works, trust the system.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then we got Myers and Eddie versus ABC for the tag team championships. You know, a match. It's a match. Roster party, new champs. That's basically what I wrote down. There were still signal issues on this.
No, I think the right team went over. Like, if you're trying to establish this new faction, then yeah, they had to do it. These are the guys who had to win.
Yep. All right. Package, then Khan versus PCO, no DQ. So Khan comes out and he grabs who I assume, what did they say it was the timekeeper? Is that who they said this was?
I do not remember.
Well, whoever it was, he was just sitting in a chair by the little ring bell, and then so Khan just picks him up and beels him across the floor, then picks him up and beels him across the floor again. Then he grabs a microphone and says he's the baddest man in TNA, and he says, "I'm calling out PCO," and I'm like, "What do you
Wasn't
mean
this match already?
Yeah. Scheduled match? I'm calling my opponent out for their scheduled match. Who is? All right. So now at this point, the feed I'm watching, this is where it ends. Like it ends in this like right after this. So then part 2, so I have to load up part 2, and part 2 starts with the lights being out and then the lights coming on and PCO being in the ring. Is that how it played out?
Yeah, they did his entrance. I think so. If I remember
They did his
correctly,
entrance with did they wheel him out and all that stuff too?
if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah.
Okay. Well, at some point,
I mean, I admit I was kind of more watching it in the background.
Well, they did his full entrance on the TV show, right?
Yes.
So that happened, but this one I thought it was a lights out, lights on thing. Whatever, however it happened, he got in the ring. They did a bunch of stuff that meant absolutely nothing, because that's exactly what these guys are going to do. And then after everything, baddest man in TNA, all this stuff, PCO salt on a pile of chairs. That's all it takes. 1, 2, 3. That's it. Now, what do you think about that? What do you think about PCO going over here? Is Khan finished? Like, there's no hope for this guy, right?
He's done. If he's not going over PCO to kind of help establish him as a new monster, he's done. Okay. I believe that both Khan and PCO are going to get fed to Hammerstone to make him the new like monster.
Yeah. Well, now it won't mean anything. Not neither one of them.
Nope.
But I mean, personally, I thought Khan was dead since day one. Like once he joined the design and they were doing all that stuff, like, and he never won any matches, I was like, he's dead. It's over. Him splitting off and declaring himself the baddest man. Nobody was buying it. Nobody thought that was a thing. You know?
If you got to tell everybody it ain't true.
Yeah, and it's too bad because obviously he's a huge guy and he can do stuff. So that is not. It's not necessarily his fault. Even though he called out his opponent for a scheduled match.
Bad booking.
So they have AJ Francis is cutting a promo to the camera, and then Joe Hendry walks in the door behind him and kind of gets in his face. And, you know, they have some words, and then he shoves, Francis shoves Hendry, and then Santino and security are right there to break this up. They've had enough violence, so they're going to make sure nothing else happens.
In this situation, I can understand the security there being waiting for something to happen because security's already there on one side of the camera. So I can believe, like, on the other side that there's people waiting, like, okay, like, just in case this gets out of hand, we're right here. And they've already established it, like, you know.
Mm-hmm. But I also think that they should probably do that every time because obviously the show has proven that there's way too much unscheduled violence, and security needs to be posted everywhere at all times to prevent unscheduled violence from breaking out. Because if you have all this unscheduled violence breaking out, then these regular wrestling matches are a lot less interesting. Just a thought. But Santino says they'll have a match next Thursday, so get ready for AJ versus Hendry 1-on-1. Let's see. The three competitors for the Knockouts Championship match are warming up in the back. But then we go to the Knockouts Tag Team title match, where you get MK Ultra is supposed to defend their championship against Spitfire. Is that what we're going with? Which one's the spit? And which one's the fire?
I spit hot fire.
Yes, Dylon and Dylon are the team here. Yeah, that's a terrible name. I don't mind saying. I don't care if I hurt anybody's feelings. Whoever came up with that, you know, for a business that prides itself on naming every team and every move after puns related to people's names. I don't know where Spitfire comes from. It would have been less stupid if they went with my joke name of Lunar Threat, but you know, Spitfire. So anyway, they're making their entrance and MK Ultra just jumps them. Like, fuck it. We probably got our time cut. Let's just jump them. This match had to be that. There's no way this match wasn't, we got our time cut. They really wanted to book this way. I've never seen anybody, like, I've never really seen this as like a thing that TNA does. But what happens is MK Ultra skips their entrance to beat them up on the ramp. They start a brawl outside. Then they hit, Masha hits a snowplow on Danny Luna on the floor. So that takes her out of the match. And then they sort of like, now that they've got Jody Threat by herself, you know, they kind of do the 2-on-1 deal. The match starts. Jody Threat's like, you know, they get ready to ring the bell. And she's like, yeah, ring the bell. I don't care. She's like pulling herself up in the corner. She's like, let's go. And then they ring the bell. And then they continue to kick the shit out of her. And then all of a sudden, when it gets to a certain point, after like 2 minutes, 3 minutes or something like that of heat, they, like, Danny Luna comes back and she grabs Masha by the leg, pulls her out. And then Jody Threat rolls up Killer Kelly 1, 2, 3. So now MK Ultra has lost their championships again in a weird short match that was jump started. And then there's a little bit of a argument because Masha's now upset with Killer Kelly and she kind of storms off. I mean, what do you make of all this?
If they wanted to do a fluke win for Spitfire, way better ways to do it. I think that's what they were going for, but just the execution was way off.
Well, do you think they had something else planned that they had to change for some reason?
That's a good question because like just because the whole decision of flipping the belt says that felt like really off and sudden.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like they just got him back at the last show that was what, like 2 weeks ago?
I think so. Yeah, not long. And it's not really going to help these Spitfire, I don't think. It's more people are just going to be like, what? Hot potato with belts is never like a good booking idea, in my opinion. So, but but I don't know. Some because of the awkwardness, the general awkwardness of the match, it made me think that like something, like some audible was called. But I could be wrong. They could have intended to do this. Uh, I don't know.
Yeah, we're not looking at the booking sheet. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't. I didn't hate it, other than the actual title change. But like the idea of it, I didn't hate. Uh, all right. Well, package, then Hammerstone versus Alexander 2. Okay, so I already talked about how this should have went the first time around, especially so now that we've seen this match. Like this is absolutely they got the wrong results. They should have flipped these results, I think. Or they could have had Hammerstone go over twice. Especially if your idea of him making him the new monster, then that would make a lot more sense. But what I had said was the first meeting, Josh Alexander wins, and I thought it would be better for an outsider to come in and beat Josh Alexander so that there could be some sympathy on him, some doubt on him, something to make him vulnerable. You know, they talked about he's the longest reigning TNA champion, but he's not the TNA champion right now. And what better story to tell for why he's not the TNA champion, that he's somehow lost something and he's got to figure out how to get it back. And if a guy comes in that's bigger and badder than you and beats you, that gets sympathy on you. It doesn't make you look weak. It makes you look like, you know, people want to get behind you because, you know, they like you and you're vulnerable right now. So they want to see you come back. Instead, he just beats the guy, and then what? And then they give him a job. Hey, thanks for losing to Josh Alexander. You got a job. You know, and then I explain how that doesn't make sense given the Simon Gotch booking, where the story is that Josh got a job for winning a match. So it's like Alexander Hammerstone should have got a job for winning a match, and so on and so forth. So, but in this match itself, some interesting criticism. Like, this is why I'm kind of like, after watching this, I'm kind of done with Josh Alexander. Like, first of all, um, they do like a long heat like on his back. So Alexander Hammerstone's working a body part, like you often hear people, old timers, talk about is important to do. He's working the back. But then there's a spot where he goes to put him in the corner and he gives him like those shoulders to the stomach. And it's like, why not turn him around and give him the shoulders to the back? If you're working the back, that seems like an easy thing, but that's just a small thing. Then there's another spot where he's got a bear hug on. Okay, good. You're working that back. You're doing a hold that accentuates your strength. It's a good visual picture. You see a giant man hugging Josh Alexander, and it looks like that would be very painful based on the size of these individuals and the fact that his back has been attacked for several minutes now. But he does this thing where when he picks him up for the bear hug, he kind of like staggers back to the ropes, and then Josh Alexander grabs the rope to break the bear hug. But then Hammerstone just walks away from the rope with the bear hug still on. And then he ends up like giving, you know, Josh Alexander tries to fight out, and then he gives him like a overhead belly to belly suplex. Well, here's a note for the refs and for both these guys, because apparently you don't know this. And Brandon, you should know this because you are a ref and a worker. If you grab the rope, the hold is nullified. So it doesn't matter if he walks you away from the rope after he's already touched the ropes.
You got to
That's
break
it.
it.
You have to break the bear hug. Okay. So here's how you get out of that very easily. If he grabs the ropes and you take him away from the ropes, the referee starts counting to 5 to tell you to break the hold, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. On 4, overhead belly to belly suplex. That's how you break the hold. Hell of a spot, right? Great for the middle of the heat. They didn't do that. The referees in Impact are absolutely clueless. I don't know who's teaching them anything.
No, that makes perfect sense. Like if he doesn't break the hold, it's nullified, and you got a 5 count to let go. That's simple.
Yep. Yeah, one of the things the referee taught me when I was learning at OVW, this referee Ray Ramsey, when he was saying like, "Hey, if I'm telling you to, like if this goes for anything that the ref tells you need to break. Like if you pull a guy's hair, right? Or something, or you do some illegal move like an eye gouge and a headlock or something. If the ref sees you do it, he's going to tell you to break the hold. Like you don't get to just keep your hold if you break the rules. So if he counts for you to do that, one thing you could do, like if you got a guy in a headlock and he tells you to break, you just break it and then grab the headlock again. Like as a heel, just, okay, I broke it up. Now I got it again. Right. Same thing as like rolling into the ring and rolling back out to break the count. It's just things that you can do. But that's the thing. These guys sit in the back. You plan out your long ass match, your pre-planned match, and then you forget to incorporate the referee into stuff. You're too worried about getting your shit in. So anyway,
you're not playing off of what's happening organically.
Yes, like this is where like people might say, oh, you're thinking too detailed. Nobody cares about that stuff. We don't need to establish rules. Nobody cares. It's pro wrestling, blah, blah. Any excuse that people say, but that's the deal. Like if you have an established set of rules, if you establish the rules, then you can easily change things on the fly. As long as you know what the rules are, you can use them to your advantage if something breaks down and you have to change things. Or if a spot presents itself in the middle of a match, you can ad lib it and you could call it on the fly to do something like a rope break or whatever, like anything that you see there to make it interesting, right? Like if you know what the rules are, it's easier to be experimental and spontaneous. If you don't have any rules, then all you do is just pre-plan your bullshit match, and then people like me go like, well, that sucks, why'd you do that? I guess you don't care what I say, but it's fine. I'm just telling you that there's an art form here and you're blowing it. You're doing finger painting. You could be painting masterpieces. You could be painting Picassos. You could be painting Van Goghs. Instead, you're fucking smearing it all over yourself. So just a thought. And to further illustrate my point or paint my point, after this long back heat of gigantic Hammerstone just destroying the spine of Josh Alexander, who we know has had 2 neck surgeries, or at least 2 neck injuries. He's had 1 surgery, 2 injuries, right?
Yeah, it was a neck and triceps, I believe.
Yeah. Well, if you heard him on Keeping It 100, he talked about his other neck injury that he came back from too early, right? So he's had two bad neck injuries in addition to the triceps surgery now. So we know, but that the tricep is irrelevant because we're talking about the spine and the neck. So he just had this giant guy beat up his back, and what's his comeback?
Dive over the top rope.
Huh?
Oh yeah, the 10 Germans and then dive over the top rope.
10 rolling German suplexes. After you just got your back smashed for 10 minutes.
Killed all that heat.
Yeah. Is that real? Oh, you just fucked up my spine, so now I'm just going to lift you over my head 10 times, even though you're way bigger than me? And you're going to let me do it? I'm done with Josh Alexander. He just made the list. Anyway, there's a ref bump. Josh gets the ankle lock. Hammerstone taps out. Then he hits. Then when Josh lets go, even though he knows the referee's out, so he looks like an idiot, but he lets go of the ankle lock when Hammerstone taps. Hammerstone kicks him in the balls. He had to slap his leg on the ball kick. Nightmare pendulum. 1, 2, 3. He takes Alexander's headgear as a trophy. His headgear came off during the Nightmare pendulum. I don't know if this was planned, but if it wasn't, that's a good improvisation by Hammerstone to take the headgear and put it on his bicep and flex with it, everything like that. If it was planned, then it's still fine. But not only was the booking bad because of all the reasons I explained earlier, the match itself, while I like the structure of the match, you know, the idea of getting the heat and then the comeback and all that stuff, but the comeback he made, absolutely brain dead dumb. Yeah, so I no longer will defend Josh Alexander. I will now bury everything that he does when I see him do it. And I'm fully on board with the this guy's boring train too. So let's go to that. But what did you think?
Same exact thoughts you had. Like, I enjoyed the structure. I thought it was done well. It's just like when it came to the comeback, killed it. The comeback absolutely killed it.
Yeah, man, you're just like, I was sitting there, I was like, good, you're working a body part. Even though those little things that I said, you know, those little nitpicks or whatever, I don't know how many of the fans would have thought of those things, like with the bear hug and everything, but just like, come on, like, I don't know. Plus, you shouldn't, like, never mind any of the psychology. Just asking a guy like Hammerstone, hey, mind if I German suplex you 10 times in a row? Like, it's just rude. It's rude. I would hate to ask somebody that. Doesn't matter if I can do it or not. It's like you're asking the guy to take 10 bumps like that. Each one of those bumps is taking another bump on the bump card. Like, for what? And you're going to get tired doing it. And whether your back injury is fake or not, your neck injuries aren't. So you're taking, you know, do
You're
I really
taking
need
the
to
bumps
explain
too.
it? Yeah. So, all right. So Josh Alexander's done. Time machines with Gia and no music underneath. She asks if they can be on the same page. You know, in many more words than this, although he does say it, Alex Shelley goes, yep, and walks off. So the other two are left looking confused. So now we get Grizzled Young Veterans and Ali versus Time Machine. Was this one of the matches you got to see?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on it? I'll let you go first on this one if you want.
Not really. I mean, I thought I thought the structure of it was decent enough where they told the story of there's some like they're having their dissension, but then they start to get on the same page, and then the finish ends with a miscalculation, then the heels go over. I liked that, but again, just the no selling, get your shit in.
Yeah, it was especially toward the end. Well, they did a good hot tag to Kushida. It's actually Saban dove for the hot tag. Like he made a diving hot tag to Kushida, so that's good. And when you hear Jim Cornette talk about people's cold tags, he'll say something like he made a cold flat-footed tag. And what that means is that the guy basically just walks over and tags with no impediment or obstruction. So it's not very exciting. But this one, the heels made the tag, and because I think Saban hit like a stunner, like a jawbreaker or something while he was in a hold. And I think who was it? Was it Drake maybe that took it? But whoever took it staggered back afterwards to the heel corner, and Ali tags in, and Ali goes to run for Chris Sabin, and Chris Sabin dives to make the hot tag to Kushida. So that's a good example of a hot tag. And he made a good comeback, actually. A lot of rhythm to his comeback, a lot of fire to his comeback. he got a double hoverboard lock on Grizzly Young Veterans by himself, which was funny. I don't know how realistic it was, but it was funny. And then the Good Hands rundown.
Yep, and didn't last too long before it got broke up.
Right, just enough, but it made Kushida look like a madman.
You got the visual. That's what's important.
Yeah, he was fired up and he looked like a madman that was about to win this whole match by himself. And that's what it should look like when a hot tag comeback happens. Like when that guy comes in, whether it's tag team, 6-man, 8-man, 10-man, when that whoever the hot tag goes to, the crowd needs to think he's going to beat up the entire other team by himself. He's so fired up. That's the whole point. And so that's what it looked like here. He looked like a man possessed. The Good Hands ran down. Everything broke down after that into unlimited double and triple teaming. But then, like you said, the miscalculation, which was Shelley tags himself in and then pretty much gets hit with the grit your teeth and a 450 combo and loses. So now he has nobody to blame but himself. This furthers the dissension story, but I don't know. What's Shelley going to stand on here? He can't blame his partners because he's the one that took over. So we'll see what happens, but that was basically it there.
Yeah,
I mean, that's another package for our. Sorry.
Yeah, that story is really the only thing that this match had going for it, and even then, that story is like,
Yeah. Yeah, all right. So we get a package for our Knockouts Championship Triple Threat match. It's Xia Brookside versus Tasha Steelz versus Jordan Grace. They're having a match. Ash by Elegance is enjoying champagne at ringside. It's like, can we perhaps get a sponsorship, champagne sponsorship for Impact?
Whoa,
what are
baby.
You supposed to drink? Yeah, whoa, baby. What do you drink? I could see there'd be a conflict of interest there. You could, look, so you get a bottle of champagne, and you watch Sacrifice with your champagne, but come on, are you going to drink the whole bottle? You're going to need something else to watch for the rest of your bottle. Why not, when you're streaming a dark game or whatever, why not have some more champagne? Like, I think we could get Corbell something. Like, we could find out something. But anyway, as she's enjoying her champagne, Tasha Steelz is thrown into Ash, and she gets champagne all over herself, and she's very upset. And rather than attacking everybody like I thought she would, she just loudly left, and the concierge is helping her to the back, and then he fell down, and they laughed at him and some other stuff. So there that went. And then the ladies just did spots until the Juggernaut driver on Xia Brookside. So Jordan Grace retains the Knockouts Championship. But that's what I mean. It was just like one spot after another, but it looked a little bit less contrived than some of the stuff. There'd be like double submission type things or stuff people were trying to do on the ropes. I don't know. You said you didn't see this, or you did see it?
Just the finish.
Just finish. Okay, so yeah. Juggernaut driver. And speaking of the finish, we're now at the main event. It is Eric Young versus Moose for the TNA Championship. First time ever meeting between these guys. Oh, the antlers are out. Yeah, so I will watch Moose anytime, anything he does. I will watch it. This was not my favorite. This match was not my favorite. And I don't think I should blame Moose for all of this. I'm going to say it was Eric Young, who should know better, but apparently he doesn't. I'll give you some examples of some things that were bad, right? So there's a spot where Eric Young, well, first of all, Eric Young just beats Moose up to start. Like, he just beats him up, okay? We got to, these small guys, he's not even that small, but he's like these short guys that can't help themselves. They just cannot help themselves. They have to get over on these unbelievable specimens. Moose literally looks like a Greek god because he came out wearing this toga thing in his entrance. So he looks like fucking Zeus. And then here comes Eric Young with his little panties that say world class maniac on them and just beating the shit out of him. And then he throws Moose into a post, and Moose bounces off the post and goes halfway up the ramp. And then when Eric Young goes after him, Moose just picks him up and slams him. So no sell the post shot for a body slam. It doesn't matter. Eric Young's back up and he's back dropping Moose on the ramp anyway. So it's like nothing is getting sold here. Moose hits a superplex on Eric Young later. Only for Young to just suplex him back. Like Moose does the superplex, top rope superplex, doesn't go for a Falcon's arrow. Well, he might have, I don't know. But he rolled through the superplex and picked Eric Young up again, like he was going to give him another suplex. He had him in that position, and he's just like, he said something, like he yelled out something to the crowd, and then Eric Young just suplexes him. So, okay, you paid him back for the superplex with your regular superplex. The whole idea of being a babyface is you have to one-up the heel. That's the whole idea. Like whatever the heel does to you, you give him retribution by doing that plus one or doing the next step up. So, if Moose was to say, here's how you would do the spot, basically. Moose would give Eric Young a suplex. And then Eric Young sells the suplex. And then Moose climbs up to the top rope because now he's going to hit a big move, right? And he could do all his taunting and posing or whatever. And then Eric Young can get up and maybe like bounce off the ropes and knock Moose down onto the top. And then he can superplex Moose. So you see how the superplex is the next biggest thing off of the regular suplex. So that's what you would do to do that kind of a spot. You don't go from superplex to normal suplex. You fucking idiots. He gave Moose a clothesline and Moose took the 360 bump like he was some kind of a cruiserweight. Eric Young kicked out of a spear. I'm just saying, these guys can't help themselves. They just have to, dude. All right, so anyway, he gives Moose a pile driver, and Moose gets his foot on the ropes. Eventually, they end up outside the ring, and he gives him a pile driver on the apron. Then he gives Moose a pile driver on the floor, and then the system finally runs out. Eric Young dives on both of them, the guys. Then he hits a Canadian Destroyer on Moose. And then the system tries to like interfere some more, and then Eric Young tells the referee to eject both of them, and he ejects both of them. And then while he's doing that, some crew member or whatever, which it's so funny because they're trying to sell this like, is that a crew member? Like, yes, it's a crew member that has like an extension cord and is choking Eric Young for some reason. I'm sure that a cameraman would randomly decide he's going to turn on Eric Young in the middle of the match. Fuck, I'm so tired of this. Oh God. Anyway, obviously it's Frankie Kazarian, chokes him out with the cord, throws him in the ring. Moose hits a spear. 1, 2, 3. This is mercifully over. This is terrible. I hated it. I like watching Moose, but to be honest and fair, the match was bad. So, meh.
Man,
that's all I got.
How can two guys like Eric Young and Moose get that so wrong?
I don't know. Is there a third party? Do they have like a producer that helps them put their match together that's offering stupid suggestions?
Honestly, who knows, man? Who really knows?
Somebody knows. But I don't know. So there you go. You made me disappointed in Moose. But at the same time, I can also understand, like, if Eric Young has these ideas, if any of them belong to him, Moose is not really in a position to say, I'm not doing that, because he respects Eric Young. And I don't think, even if he didn't respect Eric Young, he would still feel like it was his place. So, seniority and respect are a thing. And Moose seems like the kind of guy that would defer to the veteran. So that's probably why Moose would go along with this stuff. Things seem very different.
That makes sense.
As we've seen in the match where Moose is the senior, such as with Kevin Knight, much less stupid stuff happens in that match. So I think Moose kind of knows. I think Moose gets it. I think he just defers to his seniors when he has to, and then that ends up being like, well, I trusted these guys and this is what they give me, like you said, Eric Young ought to fucking better know better. He shouldn't be doing the stuff that he's doing in this. I mean, especially considering his promo, because when you look at his promo of like, he put Moose over saying bigger, stronger, faster. So the story should have been, like, I'm barely surviving this. And
or maybe
Moose
Eric
is
Young
the one that's trying to survive. Go ahead.
Or maybe Eric Young was trying out for Daft Punk.
Maybe he was. I think they're full. Even though he does have a Dr. Doom mask. But regardless. But you know what I mean? Like, if he's saying that in the promo, the whole match should have been Moose being like, well, Eric Young is clearly past his prime and he is no match for me. So now it's going to be a thing of like, well, I'm just going to toy with him a little bit and then I'll put him away. And then when he tries to put him away, Eric Young kicks out, and then he gets a little more serious every time Eric Young kicks out, because that fits the promo. That fits the story. Eric Young saying, I'm going to keep coming for you, even though you're better than me. So that's how you tell the story in the match. You like Moose goes for a slam. He's like, it's over. Like, he'll be the first person to pin a guy with a body slam in 40 years. And then Eric Young kicks out and he's like, okay. All right, fine. And then you escalate from there. But the match should be all Eric Young selling and surviving and trying to make those comebacks. It wasn't like that at all. He just kicked the shit out of Moose, and Moose was the one that was like fighting for his life to survive. He looks like he's getting crippled with all these pile drivers. He should be in a wheelchair on Impact this Thursday. Like, what the fuck even was this? So the match was all wrong in every possible way. Other than, yeah, it's good to get heat with outside interference. Like, I don't mind that on a heel champion. But other than that, no. And you still could have told that same story. Like, Eric Young survives, then he makes a desperation comeback, and you think he might have a chance to win, and then that's when the system runs out. Kazarian, whatever, yada, 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 Schmaz, Snavitz, Burnham, whatever. But their sacrifice.
My sacrifice.
So, well, it looks like we've kept you long enough. You've made the sacrifice to stay with us for this supersized edition of the Impact Attack, and we should get on out of here. Is there anything I'm forgetting about, Brandon?
No, I think we covered everything.
All right.
And shit, pal.
Yeah. Yes. Again, choice of words, but it's very apropos here. So I guess tell the people where they can find you as we get on out of here.
As always, you can find me on Twitter, or as the kids call it these days, the X, at Transarchistia. And once I finally start getting my Twitch streams going again, oh yeah, the big announcement with this show. This is the last show I'll be doing on this laptop. Big Ray hooked me up. I got a new laptop to use. It's better than this one, so hopefully we'll be seeing a much better production.
All right. More breaking news.
Yep, and I'm also on Substack at HMG Brandon, where you can find all of the Punching Up Impacts.
All right. Well, you can find me at Opinion Haver on all your favorite social media platforms or platforms in general. Just search for Opinion Haver and you will be able to tell that it's me because I'll be the one that's good and making sense. And any other pretenders or imposters are easily fleshed out. So you check out, speaking of Big Ray, the Next Level Wrestling Review with Big Ray Hernandez every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern live. If we're going to get that strike dealt with, it won't be on YouTube. It may be on his channel or on YouTube, the Big Ray Hernandez channel, or it could be on some other channel. So we'll see. But definitely join us if you can. Then you check out the Saturday Night Wreckage, usually on a Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, with myself and Jimmy T, where we talk about Collision, AEW, and how things are going over there. You've also got to check out, let's see, what else have I got going on? Nothing really. Wrestling with Herb Rogers. Check that out every Friday, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, for a Q&A, live Q&A, and possible special guests. And you got to check out everything Stevie Richards is doing, including why Darby Allin's spot through the glass was totally wrong. In addition to many other things, behind the scenes footage on his Patreon of how he's setting up his studio and how he's using his studio. Weekly Patreon things where he answers your comments and does a special show just for his subscribers. So he's also still got his Big Fitness Show podcast and everything else, all these channels, everything he's got going on. It's frankly, it's too much for me to keep up with. But you guys could check it out if you want. And big congratulations once again to Ben Hameen and Raven's Joint opening up. This is his dream. He's got his dispensary out there now. Rob Van Dam was there. Big wheeling and dealing. As MVP would say, big things popping, little things stopping. So, congratulations again to the Ayatollah. And that's congratulations to us for making it through another episode. So for Brandon, I'm the vet, and I don't know.